The fluorescent lights of Harlow Memorial Medical Center buzzed like something was trapped inside them. Officer Brett Larkin's hand was flat against Marcus Reeves's chest. Not a shove. Not yet. But the pressure was there, firm, deliberate, the kind of pressure that comes with a uniform and a decision already made. Marcus stood with his back against the cold triage wall. His jaw was locked. His one remaining hand was balled into a fist at his side. The right sleeve of his jacket, empty below the elbow, hung loose against the wall behind him. Both pant legs ended where flesh became carbon fiber and titanium alloy. His face was sheened with sweat. His eyes were red at the rims. Not from crying. From fever. From 3 days of an infection eating through the tissue above his right prosthetic socket that he had refused. The way men like him always refuse to admit was serious. "Larkin, sir. I need you to stop talking. Right now. Marcus. I need a doctor. That's all I'm asking. I need a doctor. Larkin. You were disruptive. Marcus. I was in pain." Behind Larkin, Dr. Priya Anand stood with her arms crossed, her badge catching the light. Charge nurse Damien Cole had his phone out. 2 security guards flanked the hallway entrance like bookends. The ER had gone quiet. Patients in chairs turned their heads. A man with a bandaged hand. An elderly woman in a wheelchair. A teenage boy holding a cloth to his forehead. All of them watching. All of them silent. Tyler, Dad. The word hit the room like something breaking. Tyler Reeves, 9 years old, his Batman backpack still bouncing on his shoulders from running, stopped at the edge of the hallway. His eyes went from Officer Larkin's hand to the wall, to his father. "Tyler. Dad. Why is he against the wall? He didn't do anything." "Marcus, Tyler. Hey buddy. It's okay." "Tyler. Why is he against the wall? He didn't do anything." Sandra Reeves appeared in the doorway behind her son, breathing hard from running across the parking lot. Her eyes swept the scene in 1 second, one practiced, awful second, and her face went the color of chalk. "Sandra. What is happening? What is happening right now?" Nobody answered her. And in that silence, in that terrible fluorescent-lit silence, a door opened at the far end of the hallway. A young man in green scrubs and a lanyard full of equipment keycards stepped out, rolling a cart. He was mid-20s, sandy-haired, carrying a tablet. He had the distracted look of someone running late. He stopped. He looked at the scene, at the officer, at the wall, at the man being held there, and then he looked at the man's face. His tablet dropped from his hand and clattered on the floor. Nobody noticed. Everyone was watching Officer Larkin. Everyone was watching Marcus. But Danny Kowalski, 29 years old, prosthetics technician, level 2 certified, a man who had spent 4 years studying every photograph ever published from the Kandahar province bombing of August 2012, was not watching the officer. He was looking at a face he had last seen in a framed Pulitzer Prize photograph hanging above his desk at home, covered in blood, dragging 2 unconscious soldiers away from fire. Marcus Reeves had driven 40 minutes with his left hand on the wheel and a soaked paper towel pressed between his right stump socket and the prosthetic fitting. That detail matters. Not because it shows how much pain he was in, though it does, but because it shows you who Marcus Reeves is. He drove himself. 40 minutes. With a fever of 102.4, he checked with the thermometer he kept in his glove compartment the way other people keep napkins, and an infection that had been progressing for 4 days, and he still drove himself. He did not call Sandra. He did not call his buddy Ray, who lived 12 minutes away and had offered 100 times. He did not call 911. He drove himself because men like Marcus Reeves, men who were made in the specific furnace of 22 years of special operations service, do not call for help. They handle it. They push through. They keep moving. It is not stubbornness in the way that word usually means. It is something deeper and older, hammered into them so thoroughly that it stopped feeling like a choice years ago. He pulled his pickup into the Harlow Memorial parking lot at 11:14 in the morning, found a handicap space, and sat there for 90 seconds with his eyes closed. Not praying, just calculating. Pain level 7, maybe 8. Manageable. Walk to the entrance. Check in. Wait, don't make a scene. Don't be difficult. He had rehearsed this before. The way veterans rehearse public spaces, exits, noise levels, crowds. He was not afraid of the hospital. He was afraid of what he became in spaces like this, loud, bright, chaotic spaces where people moved fast and spoke in codes and made decisions about you based on the first 3 seconds of looking at you. He knew what he looked like. He knew what they saw. 1 arm, 2 prosthetic legs. The kind of face that has been through enough that it stopped being able to hide it. He got out of the truck. The walk from the parking lot to the ER entrance was 40 yards. On a good day, with his legs fitted correctly, no swelling, no pain. He moved with the rolling, purposeful stride of a man who had made peace with his body's limitations by mastering them. Physical therapists had told him he was one of the most capable triple amputees they had ever worked with. He had been running on his prosthetics within 14 months of the bombing. Running. This was not a good day. His right leg socket, the one with the infected site, sent a bolt of white pain up through his residual limb with every step. By step 15, he was compensating. By step 25, the compensation was visible. He was tilting, pulling the weight to his left side, grimacing in a way he would have hated if he'd been able to see it. He pushed through the automatic doors at 11:19 a.m. The ER at Harlow Memorial was not having a quiet morning. 7 patients in chairs, 2 on gurneys along the wall. The triage desk was staffed by a nurse named Damian Cole, who was simultaneously typing, answering a phone, and reading a chart. Marcus stood at the window. He stood there for 60 seconds. Damian Cole did not look up. Marcus knocked on the window. Once. Politely. Cole held up a finger without making eye contact. Another 90 seconds passed. The bolt of pain came again. Marcus shifted his weight, pressed his left hand against the counter. Marcus. Excuse me. I've got an infection. I need to be seen. Cole, sign in on the sheet. Someone will call you. Marcus looked at the sign-in sheet. It was on the far end of the counter. He would have to lean across, with his one arm his compromised balance, and try to write on a clipboard that wasn't secured to anything. Marcus. Can you bring the clipboard here? Cole, it's right there. Marcus reached for it. His balance shifted. His right leg screamed. He caught himself on the counter. Cole. Sir, you need to wait like everyone else. Marcus. I've been standing for 5 minutes. I have an active infection. I have a fever. I need a doctor. Cole looked up for the first time. He took in Marcus in the way that some people do, not as a man, but as a collection of visible differences. The empty sleeve, the particular way he stood, the sweat on his forehead that went beyond a warm day. And he made a judgment. Not consciously, maybe. These things are rarely conscious. But it happened, and it settled on Cole's face before he could smooth it away. Cole. Sir, everyone here has something urgent. Please sign in and take a seat. Marcus signed in. He found a chair near the wall. Back to the wall, old habit, non-negotiable, and he sat down. He waited 22 minutes. In those 22 minutes, the fever climbed. The pain climbed. The ER got louder. A teenager came in with a possible broken wrist. An older man was wheeled past having a cardiac event. 2 nurses moved at speed across the floor speaking in clipped shorthand. At the 30-minute mark, Marcus went back to the window. Marcus, I need to be seen. The infection is in the tissue around my prosthetic socket. I've got a fever and it's getting worse. I need someone to look at it. Cole, you're in the queue. We have critical patients ahead of you. Marcus, I understand that. I'm telling you that I am becoming a critical patient. Cole, sir. Marcus, I lost my legs and my arm in Kandahar. I know what infection feels like. I know what fever progression feels like. I am telling you, this is getting worse. Cole leaned back from the window, just slightly, enough to mean something. Cole, I'll let the attending know you're concerned. Please return to your seat. Marcus returned to his seat. He sat for 11 more minutes. Then the bolt of pain came. Not the regular pulse of it, but the deep, nauseating variety that meant the tissue was actively responding to something. And Marcus Reeves, who had once endured 3 hours of exfiltration after being shot in the hip in a mountainside in Nuristan without making a sound, let out an involuntary sound that turned heads. Not a scream. Not even close. But it was loud enough. Raw enough. Cole looked up. 2 chairs away, a woman grabbed her purse. And Dr. Priya Anand, who had just come out of the hallway with a chart in her hand, looked across the ER at the man against the wall and made the first of several decisions that she would spend a long time afterward thinking about. She did not go to him. She went to the triage desk. She spoke quietly with Cole, and Cole picked up the phone. Dr. Priya Anand was, by every objective measure, an excellent physician. She had graduated 3rd in her class at Ohio State College of Medicine. She had done her residency at Cleveland Clinic. She had spent 2 years doing humanitarian medicine in South Sudan, where she had treated blast injuries, machete wounds, infections so advanced they had no business being survivable. She had published research. She had mentored residents. She had, in the course of 14 years of emergency medicine, treated thousands of patients. She was also exhausted in the specific way that a 14-year ER physician who has absorbed 40,000 human emergencies becomes exhausted, not tired exactly. Tired would be manageable. What she was ran deeper. It was the kind of exhaustion that builds a shell. Quick reads. Pattern recognition. The mental efficiency that lets you process a room full of human suffering without drowning in every individual story. It is a survival mechanism. It is also, sometimes, a blindfold. When she walked toward Marcus, she had already decided what she was dealing with. Large man, agitated, loud, making demands, not responsive to direction. She had seen versions of this presentation hundreds of times. Sometimes it was drugs, sometimes psychiatric crisis, sometimes just fear wearing a hard mask. She introduced herself at the appropriate distance. Not too close, a technique they trained for. Anand, Mr. Reeves.
I'm Dr. Anand.
Can you tell me what's going on? Marcus looked at her with the flat assessment of a man who has been read wrong by rooms full of people and knows it's happening again. Marcus. I have an infection in the tissue around my prosthetic socket. Right leg. For days. It's been progressing. I have a fever. I'm in significant pain. Anand. Okay. On a scale of Marcus, 8, moving toward 9. I know what pain scales are. I filled out a lot of them. Something in his tone registered with her. She filed it under combative. Anand. I'd like to take a look. Marcus. That's why I'm here. She moved toward his right leg. He pulled back slightly, not away from her, but in the involuntary flinch of someone whose infected tissue had been jostled by movement for 3 hours. She registered it as resistance. Anand. Mr. Reeves, I need you to stay still. Marcus. I know. The movement hurts. I'm not resisting you. Anand. I need you to lower your voice. Marcus. I'm not raising my voice. Cole appeared at the doorway. Anand tilted her head in the specific way that communicates to a colleague. I may need backup. Cole stepped into the waiting area, which made it worse. Because Marcus Reeves had spent 22 years in situations where people appearing suddenly at the edges of his vision meant something specific and terrible, and while he consciously knew, that he was in an Ohio emergency room and not a forward operating base, his body did not wait for his brain to finish that sentence. He straightened. His shoulder blades went back. His jaw set. Marcus. Why is he here? Anand. He's just. Marcus. Why are there 2 of you? Anand. Mr. Reeves, I need you to remain calm. Marcus. I am calm. I came here for medical treatment. I have told you what is wrong. I have answered your questions. I need you to look at my leg. The 2 patients nearest to Marcus had moved their chairs back. An elderly man near the window was watching with wide eyes. Anand, quietly. Damien, can you call security to come stand by? Marcus heard her. Marcus, you're calling security on me. Anand. I'm asking security to. Marcus. I drove myself here. I signed in. I waited 32 minutes before I said anything. And you're calling security on me. His voice was not loud now. It was the opposite. Very quiet. Very still. The stillness of a man pressing down on something vast. And it was that stillness, the controlled, compressed quality of it, that Dr. Anand read, in her exhaustion and her efficiency and the shell that 14 years had built, as threatening. It was not threatening. It was grief. Raw, practiced, bone-deep grief at being this man in this world. At having given everything a country could ask for, and then having to sit in a plastic chair and perform non-threatening for someone who hadn't earned the right to judge him. But she didn't see that. She saw the surface. And Marcus Reeves stood up. Not aggressively. He stood up because his infected leg was telling him it was time to either lie down or stand up, because sitting had become a specific kind of torture. But in the context of security guards and a physician who had already made her call, standing up meant something. Security guard. Sir, you need to sit down. Marcus. I need a doctor to look at my leg. Guard, sir. Marcus. Look at my leg. Look. My leg. That is all I am asking. The other patients were fully watching now. A mother had pulled her child close. And Damien Cole, who had already taken out his phone, was dialing. Not security dispatch. 911. In the parking lot at that exact moment, Sandra Reeves pulled in, having found the hospital through a call to Ray, Marcus's friend, who had found out through a notification Marcus had apparently set up on his phone for exactly this situation. A dead man's switch. Ray had called it with hollow humor once. If I disappear, someone should know where I ended up. Sandra had Tyler in the back seat. They had been on their way to Marcus's apartment for the custody weekend. A weekend Sandra had spent 3 days mentally preparing for. The specific preparation of being in the same physical space as a man she still loved and had not been strong enough to stay with. She saw the police cruiser pulling into the lot ahead of her and felt her stomach drop 6 floors. Tyler, Mom? Is Dad's car here? She looked at the truck. Sandra, quiet. Yes, buddy. Yes, he's here. She parked. She took Tyler's hand. They walked toward the entrance and through the automatic doors and down the hallway toward the sound of voices. And then they reached the corridor and saw what was happening. Officer Brett Larkin, 44 years old, 15 years on the force, former Army Reserve, a man who kept a folded flag in his desk drawer that had been given to him at his brother's funeral, had arrived 2 minutes earlier and was trying to de-escalate. His hand was on Marcus's chest. Marcus was against the wall, and Tyler Reeves ran forward screaming, "Dad." The sound of Tyler's voice did something to Officer Larkin that procedure couldn't. He didn't step back. Not yet, but something shifted behind his eyes. A question appeared there that hadn't been there a moment before. The slight recalibration of a man who has been moving on one set of assumptions and has just been handed a data point that doesn't fit them. Because disruptive, threatening individuals in ERs are not usually met by 9-year-olds with Batman backpacks who scream Dad like the word is a lifeline. Tyler had stopped at the edge of the hallway. His backpack was still bouncing. His chest was heaving. He was looking at his father pinned against the wall with the particular frozen horror of a child whose mind is trying to build a framework around something it was never supposed to see. Tyler, why is he against the wall? He didn't do anything. Marcus's face had transformed. Everything that had been compressed and controlled and held at a careful distance cracked open when he heard his son's voice. The fever sheen, the tight jaw, the flat military stillness. All of it cracked, and what came through underneath was something officers and doctors and security guards don't train to look for. A father. Marcus, Tyler. Hey, buddy. Hey. Look at me.
I'm okay.
Tyler. You're not okay. He's... Marcus. It's a misunderstanding. These people are just doing their jobs. It's fine. Tyler looked at him for a long moment. Long enough that every adult in the hallway had to reckon with what it looked like to a child. What the image of a decorated combat veteran pinned against a hospital wall looked like through the eyes of the person who loved him most in the world without condition or history. Tyler, it doesn't look fine. Sandra had reached them by now. She had Tyler's shoulder in one hand. Her other hand was open at her side. The physical posture of someone trying very hard not to start a war. Sandra, what is going on? Anand. Your husband was becoming disruptive in our waiting area. Sandra, he's not my husband, but he is my son's father, and I need someone to explain to me why there is a police officer restraining him in your emergency room. Anand. Ma'am, no one is restraining. Sandra, your hand is on his chest. That is a form of physical restraint. So I'd like an explanation. Larkin looked at his hand. He lowered it. It was not a dramatic gesture. He simply became aware of it in a new way and moved it. Larkin, Mr. Reeves, I'm going to step back. I need you to stay with me for a moment. Marcus, I need a doctor to look at my leg. That's all I've asked for the last hour. I have an infection and a fever and I need someone to look at it. Tyler had moved closer. He was beside his father now, had gotten past the adult barrier by the simple expedient of being small and determined. He was looking at Marcus's right leg, at the way Marcus was favoring his left. Tyler, Dad, are you okay? Like actually?
Marcus, yeah, pull.
I'm going to be fine. He put his left hand on Tyler's shoulder, the only hand he had. His son leaned into it without thinking. But his eyes, when he looked up from Tyler, found Sandra's. And Sandra had been studying Marcus Reeves for 12 years. She knew every version of his face. She knew the face he wore when he was genuinely fine, and she knew the face he wore when he was performing fine for someone he was trying to protect. This was the second face. Something moved through her that she had spent 18 months trying to classify. It wasn't pity. She had never pitied him, and he would have hated it anyway. It wasn't the old love rekindling because the situation was dramatic enough to demand it. It was the recognition that this man, who had stood in burning rubble in a foreign country and held 2 dying soldiers in his arms, was standing in an Ohio hospital being held at bay by people who had decided what he was before they knew anything about him. And she felt rage. Not at Marcus. Not the old familiar rage of shared walls and broken sleep and the long, brutal specific failure of 2 people who loved each other but couldn't make the geography of that love work. Rage at the room. Sandra, I want to speak to whoever is in charge of this facility right now. Anand. Ma'am, this situation is being managed. Sandra, my son's father came to your emergency room with an infection and a fever. He has been waiting for over an hour. You called the police instead of a doctor. Is that an accurate summary? Anand opened her mouth. Everyone looked. Danny Kowalski stood frozen at the edge of the corridor, his cart beside him, his hand still in the position it had been when the tablet left it. He was staring at Marcus Reeves with an expression that no one in the hallway could immediately interpret. Not recognition. The word isn't large enough. Revelation. He took 1 step forward, then stopped himself, looked at the floor, looked up again. His mouth had come slightly open. Larkin, hey, you need to stay back. Danny, I know him. His voice came out strange, weightless and heavy at the same time. Cole, what? Danny, I know who he is. Danny reached into the pocket of his scrubs and pulled out his phone. His hands were moving faster than his composure. He was scrolling. Danny, I know exactly who he is. Danny Kowalski had been 24 years old when he first saw the photograph. He'd been in his 2nd year of prosthetic school, studying late in his campus apartment, and a classmate had texted him a link to a Pulitzer Prize announcement with the message, "You need to see this, man." He had opened it and sat with it for a long time. The Associated Press photo by journalist Mira Halvorsen had been taken from the 2nd floor of a compound building in Kandahar province, through a blasted-out window, 3 minutes after the bombing that would later be classified as one of the largest IED events of the entire Afghan campaign. The foreground was smoke and rubble. In the middle distance, a figure. He was bare from the waist up. His uniform shirt had apparently been blown clear of him. He was covered in blood from multiple shrapnel wounds. His right arm ended below the elbow, the wound fresh, wrapped in something dark. His legs, both below the knee, were gone, but he was moving on the bleeding stumps with the kind of determination that photographers spend careers trying to capture and rarely do. He was dragging 2 soldiers, one under each arm. Both soldiers were unconscious. The fire was behind him. His face was turned 3/4 toward the camera. Caption: Unidentified U.S. Special Forces operator evacuates wounded colleagues following IED blast. Kandahar Province, August 14, 2012. The operator was later airlifted to Bagram with life-threatening injuries. Danny had printed it, had it framed, had studied it the way a person studies a painting that they cannot fully explain the power of, not the gore, not the destruction, but the face. The expression on that face, which was not heroic in the movie sense, was not fierce or noble or any of the dramatic things that war photographs usually reach for. It was just determined. The purest, most stripped-down determination Danny had ever seen on a human face. The look of a man who has decided that death can wait 5 more minutes because there is still something left to do. He had spent 5 years working with amputee veterans. He had never connected the face to a name. Until now. Officer Larkin looked at it, then at Marcus, then back at the phone. The sequence played across Larkin's face. The initial glance, the uncertain pause, the slow-motion recognition that rewired the previous 30 minutes of his thinking entirely. He had been a soldier, not combat arms. Supply and logistics out of Fort Campbell for 4 years. He had never seen a firefight, but he knew what he was looking at. He knew what that photograph meant. Larkin. That's Danny. That's him. That's Marcus Reeves. That photo, the AP ran it in 2012. It was in every major paper. He's a Delta Force operator. He dragged 2 guys out of that blast and he'd already lost. Danny gestured at Marcus's arm, his legs. Danny, he'd already lost those when he did it. The hallway was absolutely still. Tyler was looking between Danny's phone and his father. He had never seen the photograph. Marcus had never shown it to him. Tyler knew his father had been injured. He knew his father was a soldier. He did not know the specifics of the day that had produced the man he knew. Tyler, Dad, is that you? Marcus was looking at the floor. He had known, the moment Danny dropped that tablet, what was coming. He had spent 12 years trying to move past that photograph, and it had spent 12 years following him. Marcus, Tyler, we'll talk about it later, okay? Tyler, that's you. That's really you, Dr. Priya Anand had taken the phone from Danny. She was looking at it. Her face had gone through several expressions in quick succession. The careful medical blank, then something that cracked beneath it. She recognized the infection site at his socket now in a way she hadn't before. Not because she hadn't seen the medical presentation, but because she hadn't looked. She looked now. His right pant leg was damp. Not from sweat. Anand. When did this start weeping? Marcus. This morning. Probably 6, 7 hours ago. She crouched down without asking permission. Put on a glove. Touched the fabric near the socket. Marcus flinched. She pulled back her gloved hand and what she saw made her exhale through her nose in a long, controlled breath that meant something had just jumped from one category to another. Anand. I need a gurney out here right now. Cole? Dr. Anand. Anand. I need a gurney, a broad-spectrum 4 antibiotic, and I need to get this man's prosthetic off and get eyes on that wound right now. This is a sepsis presentation. We're behind. The word sepsis is one of those medical words that carries its own weather system into a room. Everyone moved. Sandra's hand went to her mouth. Tyler didn't know what sepsis meant, but he knew from every adult face in the hallway that it was serious. He reached up and grabbed his father's remaining hand. Marcus, I told you I'd be fine. Tyler, you don't have to tell me that. Just be fine. Actually be fine. For a moment, just a moment, Marcus Reeves's face did the thing that faces do when they have held something back for too long and the holding is no longer possible. He pressed his lips together, looked up at the ceiling, drew in a breath through his nose. He was not going to cry in a hospital hallway in front of his son. That was a fact, but it was a close thing. As they moved Marcus onto it, Officer Brett Larkin stepped back. He was against the wall now, the position Marcus had been in. He was looking at Danny's phone. Danny held it toward him and Larkin took it and looked at that photograph. The smoke, the fire, the stubbled stumps moving through rubble, the face. For a long time. He handed it back. Larkin. I'll need to file a report. Danny. I'll be available. Larkin looked at the direction Marcus had been taken and something moved through his face that he didn't bother to control. Larkin. I'm going to wait. Nobody asked why. They took Marcus to a trauma bay, got his prosthetics off, and Dr. Anand saw the wound in full for the first time. She had treated blast injuries. She had worked in South Sudan. She had looked at trauma that had no business being survived. But there was something particular about looking at this wound, at the ragged infection site, at the way it had progressed because a man had waited too long, had pushed through, had driven himself 40 minutes while it worsened. That hit differently. Because she understood now, with a clarity she had not had 90 minutes ago, what it meant that he had come here at all. What it had cost him to walk through those doors and ask for help. And what she had done with that. She did not let herself sit with it. Not yet. Medicine first. The infection was aggressive. The tissue around the socket had been compromised. The seal between the prosthetic liner and the skin had allowed bacteria to build up, and with the fever and the inflammatory markers she was now getting back from the blood draw, sepsis was not a possibility. It was a timeline. She pushed antibiotics. She called the on-call surgeon. She called the wound care specialist. She moved with the efficiency that 14 years had built. All that efficiency now pointed in the right direction. Marcus. Dr. Anand. Anand, reviewing blood panel. Yes. Marcus. How bad? She looked at him. The full, direct look. Anand, we need to be aggressive about this tonight. You'll likely be here a few days. Marcus. My son, Anand, is in the waiting room with his mother. He's okay. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Marcus. The other patients in that waiting room. I made them uncomfortable. She put down her chart. Anand, Marcus. I made assumptions about you. Before I examined you. Before I asked the right questions. And because of those assumptions, I called for security when I should have been doing my job. That was wrong. I'm sorry. Marcus looked at her for a moment. He had been apologized to before. By people who were apologizing to manage the situation. He had gotten good at reading the difference. This was not that. Marcus. Okay. Anand. Okay? Marcus. Yeah, I accept it. In the waiting room, Sandra sat with Tyler on one side and a cup of coffee she hadn't touched on the other. Tyler had his knees pulled up to his chest on the chair and was looking at nothing. Sandra, he's going to be okay. Tyler, I know. Sandra. Tyler. Tyler, I know, Mom. I know he will. He always is. A beat. Tyler. That's kind of the problem, isn't it? He's always okay, so nobody worries about him. So nobody helps him. Because he'll be okay. Sandra had no answer for that. Because it was one of the truest things she had heard in years. And it had come from a 9-year-old who had unknowingly just diagnosed 12 years of marriage and 18 months of separation in 2 sentences. Danny. Are you his family? Sandra. I'm his son's mother. Danny, he's going to be fine. Dr. Anand is good. When she's focused, she's really good. Sandra. She should have been focused from the beginning. Danny, yeah, she should have. Sandra. How did you know who he was? Danny showed her the photograph. Sandra looked at it for a long time. She had never seen it. Marcus had never shown her. She had known what happened in the clinical summary way that spouses of wounded veterans come to know things, dates, locations, medical designations. She had not known what it looked like. She looked at the photograph for a long time. At the stumps. At the fire. At the face. At the 2 soldiers being dragged through rubble. Sandra, he never told me. Danny. Some of them never do. Sandra, 12 years. He never told me what that day looked like. Danny. It's not secrecy. It's just, there's no frame for it. There's no way to say it so that someone who wasn't there understands what they're hearing. Sandra. Thank you. For what you did in there. Danny. I just said what was true. Sandra. That's not a small thing. Saying what's true in a room that's decided on a different story. At the far end of the corridor, Officer Brett Larkin was sitting in a chair by the entrance, his hat in his hands. He had been there for 40 minutes. He had not filed his report yet. He was looking at his hands in the way that people do when they are trying to square something that doesn't square. He had 15 years on the force. He had been called to dozens of hospitals. He had responded to the call exactly as he was trained to respond. And he was trying to figure out, with genuine difficulty, at what point in the protocol he should have seen what he had missed. He didn't come up with a clean answer. He suspected that was the point. Dr. Ewan, you waited too long. Marcus. I know. Ewan. Why? Marcus. Because I didn't want to be here. In a hospital. Asking for something. Being the person who needs help. It gets old. feeling like you have to prove yourself to every room you walk into. Ewan didn't say I understand. He said, Ewan, we're going to fix this. And then I'm going to refer you to someone who can fit you with a better socket, because this seal failure is not acceptable and it's not your fault. He said it like he was reading it from a chart. Matter of fact, it was somehow exactly right. 61 years old, full dress uniform because he had come from a ceremony and not had time to change, 6'2", the kind of presence that moves through a hospital waiting room like weather. He found Tyler first. Tyler, looking up at the decorated uniform, are you one of my dad's people? Whitfield, I am. I'm one of his people. Tyler nodded like this confirmed something. Tyler, he's going to be okay. Whitfield, he always is. Tyler, steady. I know. I just figured out why that's not as good as it sounds. Marcus came out of surgery at 7:22 p.m. The infection had been debrided. The tissue damage was significant but not permanent. With aggressive antibiotic therapy and proper wound management, the prognosis was full recovery. He would be in the hospital for 4 days, maybe 5. He was in a recovery room, sedation lifting, when Tyler appeared in the doorway. Sandra had argued with the nurse for 6 minutes about visitation age restrictions and had eventually won through the same quiet immovability she had used in the hallway. Tyler walked in and stood at the side of the bed and looked at his father. Marcus looked back.
Marcus, hey, pull.
Tyler, hey, Dad. Tyler was holding the copy of the photograph that Danny had printed for him at the nursing station. A small, slightly crooked printout, ink not quite right, but legible. He set it on the bed beside Marcus's hand. Tyler, you could have told me. Marcus. Yeah, I could have. Tyler. Why didn't you? The question was not angry. It was the particular directness of a child who has decided he is old enough for the real answer and is prepared to hear it. Marcus thought about the answer for a long time. Marcus. Because I didn't want you to look at me like I was broken. Or like I was a hero. Both of those are lies. I'm just your dad. I wanted to be just your dad. Tyler looked at the photograph. At the fire. At the blood. At the face. Tyler, you're still just my dad. You're also that. He tapped the photograph. Tyler, you can be both. Marcus, you're 9. Tyler, 9.5. Marcus, you're 9.5 years old and you're smarter than most people I know. Tyler, that's because most of the people you know are soldiers. Marcus laughed. A real one. The kind that hurt his chest and he didn't care. Tyler, don't say anything dumb. He left. Sandra came to the side of the bed. She sat in the chair. Sandra, you could have called me. Marcus, you know why I didn't. Sandra, I know why you think you didn't. You think I left because I couldn't handle your problems. Marcus, didn't you?
Sandra, no.
I left because every time you had a problem, you handled it so completely alone that I felt like I wasn't a partner. I was a witness. There's a difference. Marcus was quiet. Marcus, I drove 40 minutes. With a paper towel. Sandra, I know. Marcus, that's what I do. Sandra, I know, Marcus. I'm not asking you to stop being who you are. I'm asking you to let someone be next to you while you're being it. The room was quiet. Somewhere down the hallway, Tyler was apparently explaining prosthetics socket mechanics to a nurse, based on what he had learned from Danny in the last 2 hours. His voice carried, specific and detailed and thoroughly 9 years old. Marcus listened to his son's voice for a moment. Marcus, I'm not promising anything. Sandra, I'm not asking for anything tonight. It wasn't a resolution. It wasn't the clean, bow-tied ending. It was something more honest than that. It was 2 people sitting next to each other in a hospital room, tired in different ways and choosing, just for tonight, not to be alone in it. Dr. Priya Anand filed her incident report that evening. She wrote it with more specificity and self-examination than reports typically contain. It was reviewed by Dr. Lena Park, Chief of Medicine, who read it twice and then called Anand into her office. That conversation lasted 40 minutes. It was not comfortable. It was necessary. Officer Brett Larkin filed his own report. He also, separately, put in a request to his department's training division for updated protocols around medical facility calls involving patients with visible disabilities. He didn't know if it would go anywhere. He put it in anyway. Danny stopped by Marcus's room on day 2. He brought the original framed print of the photograph, the one from above his desk. Marcus looked at it for a long time. Marcus, you don't have to give me that. Danny, I know. But I want you to have it. Not because of what it is. Because of what it means that it exists. He said it on the windowsill. Danny, someone saw you. That day. Someone was there with a camera and they saw what you did and they pointed it at you and kept the evidence. Marcus looked at the photograph. At the fire behind him. At the 2 men in his arms. At his own face. Younger, bloodied, stripped of everything except the thing that was truest about him. Marcus. People see what they want to see. Danny, yes. And some people, when they see the wrong thing, when someone shows them, they change what they see. Today, a few people did that. Marcus nodded once. Outside the window, the parking lot of Harlow Memorial was ordinary in the gold light of late afternoon. Cars. People walking. The ordinary texture of a day. A man had driven himself here 40 minutes with a paper towel pressed to a wound, because asking for help had cost him so many times that the calculus of it had become unbearable. He was still here. That, in itself, was something. Some wars don't have front lines. Some of the hardest ones are fought in fluorescent-lit hallways, at intake windows, in rooms full of people who have already decided what they're looking at before you've had a chance to speak. Marcus Reeves survived Kandahar. He survived Harlow Memorial too. The question, the one that stays with you after you turn this off and go back to your day, is how many men like him don't? How many are out there right now driving themselves, with a paper towel, alone?